99.7 FM, and this morning we've been joined by Angela Dramina Boaji, who is a lawyer and executive director of the AC Foundation, and that's Dr. Angela Dramina Boaji, and also Dr. Emmanuel Azusong, who is psychiatrist and clinical psychologist, joining us via Zoom while Dr. Dramina Boaji is on the phone. So let's start with you, Dr. Dramina Boaji, and what I want us to do is to look at the red flags. But before even we do that, help us, first of all, tell us, how you felt watching that video.
Okay. I have seen many cases. This is the work I do, so I live in it, and those statistics and so on are not numbers. It's a life thing for us who work in this sector. And of course, every case is similar to the other one and different. So the shock came, the anger, the anguish, all of that came. But then, was I surprised? No. Because over and over again, we've heard and we have seen, we have touched and we have handled, these cases. So, no, I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised at what she said about the institutional response either. We are like back in the pre-90s. So, yeah.
We'll talk about the institutional response because it's something that is of concern to me because, when we moved away from women and, juvenile unit of the Ghana Police Service and went to the domestic violence and victim support unit, the whole idea was to give these persons support. So we say DOFSU, victim support. Why would the police look on unconcerned when somebody is being assaulted, Dr. Dramina Boaji?
Well, what's in a name change? NIBDNI, it's still people who make it up. Sometimes it's not the institution and it's set up, but the people who make it work. So, we work with lots of DOFSU officers, and we know those who bring commitment to their work, even when they don't have enough capacity or training or even the wherewithal, which is always a problem, for these institutions. They will work with their heart. They will connect with other services who are able to provide other services. It comes with sensitivity. And sometimes this comes not only as a human quality, but also the training, the skill you receive. We all started this work without knowing, what to do with victims and survivors when they came. We had to train for it and keep training for it. Because you need a certain level of sensitivity to handle these cases. But unfortunately, I believe that for some time now, I'm not sure how well that institution is doing in terms of skills training, sensitivity, and even their transfer policies. Because some people may be trained and they are transferred. So back then in the day, we had lots of horrible stories. Women are beaten, they go to the police station, they are given a glass of water, told to go and report to the Abusive or go and see the pastor and talk about it. And yes, women got killed in the end. And then we came this far with, WADU and then DOFSU and all of that. And we are all hoping that the institutional response would have changed. But, it's also spread. And the wider it spreads, the more capacity and money you need to run it. And this is state work.
Yeah.
It is the state. So that's what we are getting.
Okay. But it's been 2-3 days. By now, shouldn't the police be instituting investigations into which personnel, who at the Tesano police station, for instance, the case was reported to, so they're able to take their internal mechanisms in dealing with this?
I really hope that is happening. In fact, I would think that the Ministry of Interior would be very interested in a matter like this because, you have to speak to the survivors. They will point out to you the police officers who have done well, and there are many who are doing well. And then they'll point out to you those who would snitch on them, those who would tell their partners where they are hiding. They would tell them those who would ask them to to go to the village, and go and live with your mother for a while. They'll tell you those who would say, we will do marriage counseling. Call your husband and let's counsel you. They'll tell you those who say things like that and tell you it's your fault. And if you won't allow, they will tell you, then we're charging the two of you because when he was hitting you, you also threw something at him. So, like I said, well, this is where we live. We thank God for the very good ones, and there are many. But the bad ones are very, very bad.
How about, even the Ministry of Gender and Children Social Protection? They should be playing a major role in all of this, shouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I believe they are. Why? Because, of course, this is the sector within which I work, so I believe they are. And I believe that they should be interested, of course, in the aspects of services that will help a victim like this. I prefer to call them survivors, because if it wasn't a survivor, she wouldn't be alive, okay? To heal, okay, her economic empowerment issues, her safety issues, her health issues, her child care issues. All of those things are things that need to be taken up, including her mental health issues. And even though the police is supposed to be connected to these services, whether outside or internally, so that they can help people, it is important for eyes to be upon the process. And she's not the only woman, okay? There are some men too, but yeah, gender-based violence has a feminine face. We all know that by the numbers. But there are some men who are also going through, men and boys.
Okay. Let me bring in, Dr. Emmanuel Azusong, but, talking about some men going through. I remember in 2014, I was told by Chief Inspector Yafia Kenteng of the Sekendi Dofsu unit that more men had reported in Sekendi at the time. And so it wasn't only, a case of women reporting. But let me bring in...
That's true, but the agenda dynamics to it, I think it's important that we realize that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Let me bring in Dr. Emmanuel Azusong, who's a psychiatrist and clinical psychologist, because before we talk about, the red flags and all, I want to understand something. I want to understand the mindset of these persons who abuse others, because, for instance, if there's talk about, refusing to have an affair with your husband and all of that, yeah, but is that enough grounds to assault somebody? If someone says no, shouldn't you understand? Help us understand the psyche, the thinking of these persons who abuse their spouses. Dr. Emmanuel Azusong.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me. It's a very difficult thing to say because most of these things we would have to take them on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
But for a lot of men who are abusive, you will realize that the abuse to the woman is not only peculiar women. It is something that is in their nature, in their thinking, and in their upbringing. So most of these people may have some personality disorders, like narcissistic personality disorders, controlling behaviors, where they have been brought up by society to think that as the man, they should dominate affairs of the house, and that as a woman should have no say in whatever is going on in the house, and all a woman's duty should just be in the kitchen. And it's also important that we would also realize that there are also some men who enjoy the fact that they are putting pain in the woman. And in this particular video, for instance, you would notice that this man wanted to even still have sex with the woman, despite all of the controlling and demeaning nature, exposing the woman to the public and all of those other things, still wants to have sex with the woman. So there are some men who gain sexual pleasure by just inducing pain onto the woman. I cannot say for this particular case because I have not had the privilege to assess the man. But these are some of the common things that could be going on in their minds: controlling behavior, narcissistic personality disorders, and sexual desires as well.
Great. Let's look at the red flags. Okay, so if you're a woman or man and you have an abusive partner, what are some of the red flags? What are some of the signs that could tell you you need to be careful?
Yeah. So one of the first and most common things is we notice that there will be a change in behavior of the woman. And most of these things, I mean, psychiatrists would or clinical psychologists would not, it won't come to their attention. It would be family members, it would be a relative who would notice these changes and pattern in behavior. And I would want to say that the lady who took the video did a yeoman's job by even agreeing to take the video at that particular angle, because if she was caught at the time by the man, it would have been a different scenario in this particular instance. And so in women, you would notice that there are relatives, and this I am speaking to relatives and the public who know people. You would notice that their pattern of behavior will change. And when I talk about pattern of behavior, they tend to defend their husbands in certain situations. Sometimes they may not be open initially to bring it out, to share with anyone, but they would defend their husbands, because they know that if they do not defend their husbands and the husbands hear something outside, then it is going to be a difficult situation for them later on. The other thing too is controlling the activities of the woman, daily activities of the woman. You are not supposed to do this, you are supposed to do that. All of these things. If you are discussing and you have in conversation with a wife or a woman who says every single thing, every decision, they have to ask the husband. Every single decision, they have to ask the husband. It is a red flag. Because if they do not ask the husband and go ahead and take a decision that is even personal to them. I remember in the days when I was working in Upper West region, there was a woman who had come in labor. In the middle of the night, this woman came with her bag and she was in labor. We noticed that we needed to do a CS for this woman. If not, she was either going to lose her life or lose the baby. The woman didn't come with any relative, didn't come with the husband. This woman said, I need to ask my husband before. We asked, where is the husband? He said, the husband is sleeping in the house. A husband who is sleeping in the house allows a woman in labor to come to the hospital by herself, and yet when we are going to take a cesarean section that is going to inure to the benefit of the woman and the child, this woman says, I need to ask my husband who is sleeping. And when we asked this woman to call the husband, the woman was calling and the husband wasn't picking the call. You know, this is a red flag of a controlling behavior. This is a red flag of a woman who is likely enduring some form of domestic abuse. So these are some of the early things that we would notice. Other thing is in their appearance, the way in which they dress, it has changed, and they no more take care of their hair and whatever they wear. And looking at the video we saw, it's a 32-year-old woman. Now, listen, if you look at this particular woman, you would think that she's far older. Yeah. You understand? Because of the abuse that she is going through. They also lose their confidence. They lose their self-esteem. Whatever, if you are talking with them, they begin to shake and they begin to tremble. All these are early red flags and early signs that a woman is likely receiving some form of abuse.
Let me bring in Angela, Dr. Dramina Abuaji at this point, because Dr. Wilson, what you've done is actually tell us, so for instance, if you have a relative and you see these signs, then you probably could suspect something may be wrong. But Dr. Dramina Abuaji, let's look at it from the person in the relationship. So let's say I am in a relationship. What are some of the signs that I should look out for? What are some of the signs that would give me an indication that I'm in for trouble?
Well, the preference is for you to be as much as possible before you even get into it. So don't even get into it when you see these signs in your partner, and especially if you're intending to marry and so on. But by the way, again, marriage is an institution, and it's a beautiful institution. It is the people who come in with the baggage they are carrying who make it what it is. Okay? So we need to also be clear about that. So let me go back to the issue. Red flags. Controlling behavior. I think you heard that from the psychiatrist.
Yes.
Controlling behavior is one of those. Okay, if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who wants to know where you've gone, who you've been with, whose car you sat in, wants to take your phone and keep scrolling, asking you questions, this is not a sign that I love you. It is overly possessive behavior, and it comes from a deeply controlling place. Okay, wants to tell you what to wear, what not to wear. This is not friendly advice, and you know it. You know when somebody is giving you friendly advice. Oh, I think this dress looks better, but you have to open your eyes. Not only controlling behavior, the person treats you like a domestic servant. Okay, I have had young people and counseling come to me and say, especially the girl will say of the guy, he wants me to come and cook for him, wash his things, sweep the house, do all of these things, and he doesn't even say thank you. So the person treats you as though you are less than they are. That is another sign, and especially on the side of the guys. Somebody who doesn't believe in your dreams or keeps rubbing things in your face, indignifying words. Okay, so you say, oh, I want to become the best lawyer in Ghana or something. He says, oh, nonsense. I mean, what do you think you are? When we are talking, you don't even have anything much to offer. If you hear things like this, okay, denigrating statements, that's a red flag. You have a little argument, and the person says, if you don't shut up, I will slap you. That should give you the first sign to run. Because if they threaten that way, it means they can act on it. And in a marriage, so when it comes to the marriage, those signs come into the pattern that we call the cycle of abuse or violence. So you would see that once you get into the relationship, when you are interacting, at a point you begin to feel as though you are walking on eggshells. Okay? Everything seems to annoy the other person. Okay, well, your food is ready, I'm not eating. Can we talk about the children? I'm not interested. The person is granting, the person is giving you monosyllabic answers to your questions, the person is ignoring you and giving you a cold shoulder. Then the other partner feels as though they are walking on eggshells. What am I doing wrong? Is there something I have to do? Then that is where for the women, they'll be thinking maybe I'm going too big, okay, or I'm not cooking his food right. Things like that. Then it follows after with something called the explosive stage. This is where the violence happens. And when it happens, it's either physical, verbal, and sexual. Okay? So you see that with this man, for example, even though he lured his wife into the place, according to her story, he had sex with her after putting a hot substance in her private part. That's her allegation, and then started beating her after that. So at the explosion stage, it can be physical, it can be physical with sexual, and a lot of verbal abuse. And that's what neighbors hear. And then after a while, people start saying, "That's what these people, they are always fighting." No, they are not fighting. One person is in a dominating position and making the other person feel as though they are nothing. Okay? Then comes the honeymoon phase. In the early stages in the cycle, that happens. Oh, I don't know why I did this. I'm so sorry. Especially when the partner has run away and gone to their parents or gone to seek refuge somewhere. Then the person will go and take also, please, let's go and beg my wife. Let her come back home. The children, this and that. At the honeymoon stage, you who have been victimized, anything you want, you will get. Anything you want, you will get. Then it brings you back into the relationship. And usually in our culture and our practice, we won't tackle the root cause of the violence, the control and the power. And then the person comes back, we pretend nothing is happening. Okay, usually they will ask the victim to apologize. And then the cycle, everything seems okay. And that is why sometimes victims often associate the violence with the romantic part that follows and begins to say, my partner shows his love for me by being violent. And we even have it in our local songs and adages. I remember an old, I don't know whether it's a folk song or la 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 la. Those are, yes, those are some of the things. Then we accept it. Then the cycle starts again. It starts again with this little bit of anger, ignoring the person, showing them disrespect, answering them anyhow. It starts again. But most victims, especially the women, do not know they are caught in a cycle until somebody takes time to explain it to them. And I've done this quite a number of times, and the person would say, hey, lawyer, it looks as though you live with me in my house. That is exactly what is going on. So these are some of the signs when you are in the relationship. And if there isn't a strong intervention, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop.
Talking about intervention, and you've talked about, for instance, the honeymoon period. So when it starts, then they go, you go with, family elders, they go with pastors, they apologize, and then the same cycle repeats itself.
Yes.
What sort of interventions should we should be giving in these instances? At what point do we say, you know what, you need therapy until you get it, until we are sure you're not going to do this again? We cannot let you continue.
You see, there are two sides. So the one who is the perpetrator needs a certain type of help if they will seek it. Our experience is that most of them don't want it because of where they are operating from. This power and control mentality. A few want it, and if they do, they can be taken through a process of help by clinical psychologists and so on. But without a certain element of understanding the criminal nature of your act, it's very hard to make an impression on them. A lot of people fear police. Let me tell you the truth in Ghana. And that's why we were happy with DOSU, because it gave a face to the issue of gender-based violence in the country, okay, and the nature of it. And that is why that intervention is very, very important. But it's not the only one. For the victim, once they understand what is going on with them and they seek help, options are open to them, okay? So what do you want to do? Who have you spoken with? What happened when you spoke to this person? Okay, do you want to try this other option? Because you can't force them. But then something has to be done. Okay. At the very least, if they still insist they want to be in the relationship because they are not ready to step out and all of those things, they don't have options of money, where they are going, things like that, the helper must take them through a process of safety planning. And I tell you, that I know people who have lived in an abusive situation and just managed to keep themselves safe by some of these strategies. Just because maybe they want their children to grow before they take a decision. Things like that. You sleep with your phone under your pillow. You have a code with people in the house. If you see the signs, you know who to call immediately. You know not to run into your kitchen or into the place where there are lots of hard objects and things like that. You know who to call. So these are, and you have to help them go through that.
Yeah.
And that's why we keep saying that this is a very skilled area, and all our institutions need to understand the nature and the dynamics. So this is not two people fighting.
Okay. Before I get to Dr. Azusong, because you are a lawyer, I just want your take on this. Now, yes, many people talk about sometimes because of the children. There's always the conversation about, first of all, I want us to raise the children together. And then two, the fact that if I leave, who takes care of my children?
Absolutely.
But if you leave, The courts can direct the man to take care of their children. So why should that be a problem?
You see, that's not the only reason. There's something called learned helplessness that comes also when you have been victimized for a long time. Okay, so it's not just about the children. Sometimes even the children grow up and they are still there. Okay, so sometimes he will change. It's not his fault. I love him. I can't leave him. Where do I go? And that's also a big one. Where do I go? Okay, they've left home for so long. They don't have a real backbone. Some of them are not economically empowered, but some of them are, and yet they still find it difficult to exercise that option. Okay, so there are plethora of reasons why victims usually won't leave. Sometimes it's the shame and the embarrassment, especially if they are people of the elite class. Okay, and yes, this type of violence happens across board. It's not just for less disadvantaged people. No, it happens across board, and the more educated and elite you are, the less likely you are to even take steps. Okay, so all of these questions go on in the minds of the victims, and therefore they fail to take the necessary steps.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Let me bring in Dr. Zusson in finally, and I want us to focus on the victims, because at some point you should be able to say, I've had enough, and walk away for your own safety, isn't it?
Yes, that is very true, and that is very important. And like Dr. Angela mentioned earlier, with regards to the learned help, this is usually the final stage of people who have been in abusive relationships, where they become dependent on the abuse. Abuse is going on, but they think that the abuse is necessary for them to be able to survive. And so this is very important and makes it very difficult for them to walk out of the relationship. And in this woman's case, for instance, the children were a factor, and she had to lure her to come in just because of the children, and then came in, and all of this continued. But psychotherapy is involved. Therapy is involved for victims of domestic abuse, and usually what we would do is to provide a safe environment that allows them to process all their emotions without, importantly, re-traumatizing them. Because some of these people cannot even talk about the abuse. They cannot talk about the abuse because the moment they even mention their partner's name, then they begin to relive the experiences. And when I say reliving the experiences, I am talking about the pain, the physical pain that the person was going through while was being abused. The person begins to relive that experience. Psychological trauma, the person begins to relive those experiences. And so once we provide a safe environment for them to be able to process the emotions, what we then do is then to challenge the beliefs, because at the end of the day, if the abuse goes on for a very long time, it then becomes ingrained in them, and it becomes a pattern. It becomes a belief that they think that this is what should be done. So we challenge the belief gradually, and then as soon as we begin to challenge the belief, then that is when they begin to realize that where they are in is not safe for them, and it's not good for their well-being, and it's not good for their children. And then we then, as much as possible, try to encourage them to engage in some behavioral change, and then reintegrate them into the society. But therapy is always not involved only with the victim. Most importantly, we would ideal situation, we would want it to be done with the couple, both the perpetrator and the victim of the abuse. But in most instances, the perpetrator would not come in for the therapy. But as a country, we need to understand that it is a crime, and in such situations, it goes beyond we, the clinical psychologists, to be able to engage in therapy with a criminal. And so, if it comes to our attention, we are bound by law to report the criminal case to the police for them to take action. But we all know what happens. You make the report, then you, the person who has made the report, the woman would go back and say that no, it never happened, or the police would not act on it, and then you, the doctor, would now become a victim. You, the doctor, would now be a target for both the police and the family. And so it's really a difficult situation, but the ideal situation is for us to be able to engage both the perpetrator and the victim to try and solve issues amicably.
So finally, at what point? So, I mean, you've talked about the controlling behavior and all. You've talked about how some people get to the last stage where they say, I can no longer take this. But for you, at what point do you seek help? At what point must you take a decision?
Yeah. The moment you are threatened by a man or a woman, the moment you are threatened by a man or woman, that is a significant red flag. Such a relationship, you should not even go into such a relationship. You may be lured later on, even after being threatened, with gifts, with money. And this is the honeymoon stage that the doctor was talking about. You may be lured, which would even make the relationship more sweeter. But at this particular point in time, you need to begin to seek help. If you cannot seek help, just speak to an elder, speak to somebody who you know you can trust, and then leave the relationship. It is very important. At no point should we wait for the abuse to occur. And we need to also let viewers understand that the abuse is always not just physical only. It could be emotional. The kind of things that you say to the person, the denigrating words you say, you are not looking beautiful, you are fat, you are this. All of these things are emotional, and the emotional trauma even bites deeper and is even more painful than the physical. Then we have the financial abuse, and then well as the sexual abuse as well. So all of these things are very important. And I just want to add that my heart goes out to the children who have been witnessing this abuse. The children would need support, and I would encourage the gender minister to, as much as possible, to provide some form of supportive psychotherapy, or just engage with some clinical psychologists to offer support to these children and the woman as well. The woman should not be left alone. She needs both physical treatment from the bruises and, more importantly, psychological therapy to be able to recover from this from this abuse.
Well, Dr. Emmanuel Azusong, psychiatrist and clinical psychologist, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are very grateful to you. Dr. Jamina Boaji, anything you want to say finally?
Well, my hope is that this will be one of those cases that will help us test the system and seek to improve it, okay? And I am saying again that I have a lot of trust in our Ghana Police Service, because there are excellent police officers there who work with the heart, the hand, and the head, okay? But there are also many bad nuts, and we need to make sure that they are not undermining the safety of our families and of our children by their behavior. I think that is a very, very important thing we need to look at. I'm also expecting something. This is not the kind of allegation that needs to be treated under the Domestic Violence Act, which really tackles misdemeanors, lesser crimes, okay? So the degree of injury or hurt or whatever harm is not so much. This, if the allegations are true, and I'm minded to think it is, these allegations, we need to be looking for charges under the Criminal Offences Act. And if that allegation of sexual assault is real, then this is the time to test whether somebody can be charged with rape within marriage, because that was tackled by our legislation. We should test it.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Angela Dramina Boaji, lawyer and executive director of the ACT Foundation, joining us this morning together with Dr. Emmanuel Azusong, who's a psychiatrist and clinical psychologist.